The sleek black SUV pulled up outside of Naomi's building on the corner of 25th and Franklin. For the duration of the journey, Dana Scully had been seated on the passenger side next to Agent Moseley Drummy. She had ridden in one of these vehicles once before, throughout that last investigation for the FBI, and still couldn't help but be impressed with how spacious the vehicle was, allowing for plenty of legroom, along with its rather luxurious and comfortable seating. It was a far cry from the Ford Taurus she and Mulder had found themselves lumbered with on most of their assignments, working those 8 years on the X-Files. After their unfair dismissal from the FBI, both she and her partner had acquired the same make of car, as he'd always thought them practical, explaining to her that quality didn't matter. However, he'd ended up crashing hers into an icy ravine on that last case, only to be fair it hadn't been his fault, because it had been that same psychotic Russian who'd tried to kill him once before by forcing the car over the edge of a cliff with a snowplow. Even though the vehicle was completely written off, thankfully Mulder hadn't been seriously injured. However, she'd required a new set of wheels to get her to and fro from the hospital, so on that occasion had treated herself to a white Porsche with her doctor's wages. She had to admit to herself that, unlike Mulder, she did appreciate style as well as comfort. Dana knew she was only going by her gut feelings, and normally only dealt with factual evidence before making a decision, but after having retrieved Naomi's address from her work colleague and friend Mark Holmes, her main objective was getting Mulder back safe and sound, no matter what shape or form it took. Climbing out of the vehicle, both stared at the eye-catching condominium right in front of them.
Wow.
That sure is one hell of a place to live, Drummy gasped in amazement. Somewhere real cozy to put one's feet up, unlike a run-down rural shack, wouldn't you say? Realizing just what he was insinuating, Scully glared at him, then headed over to the main entrance. Finding the correct number on the intercom, she pressed the buzzer and waited impatiently. After receiving no reply, she tried again, allowing the bell to ring for a little longer this time. Come on, Dana. Looks like nobody's home, Drummy stated. Either that or they don't wish to be disturbed, he added, and couldn't help smirking. Oh, give it a rest, will you? She said in annoyance. But the fact of the matter was she wasn't going to get inside the easy way, so begrudgingly walked back over to the expedition. She was just about to climb in alongside Drummy, who'd already started up the vehicle, eager to leave, when she spied a young man, keys in hand, approaching the main door of the building. Without any hesitation, she darted out of the car and made a beeline straight for him. He watched her through the windscreen, talking to this stranger for a minute or two, then realized she was madly beckoning him to come over. Her eyes indicated she needed his assistance ASAP. Letting out an exasperated growl, Drummy switched off the engine and reluctantly went over to them, with a clear understanding that he wasn't going to be able to make the quick getaway he had hoped. "This is Special Agent Moseley Drummy of the FBI," she told the man, whose name she hadn't even asked for. After indicating to the burly African-American man beside her that he show his badge as proof of his identity, she carried on with her plan of action. "I'm Dr. Dana Scully, and we are working on an extremely important case. We require access to this building immediately, as it's a matter of urgency."
Hi.
"Kevin Hale," the young man replied, shaking their hands, rather excited to be faced with a federal agent on a case. "No problem," he added, opening the door to allow them access. "So, are you investigating a murder or something?" he said, keen to find out more information. "Something," Drummy said, forcing his air of authority. Just however this outlandish outcome was going to turn out, he really wasn't in the mood to have some enthusiastic crime fan sticking his nose in. Scully stepped in, noticing how even darker clouds were forming over the agent. "Thank you for your help, Mr. Hale," she said hurriedly. "We'll take it from here." "Glad to be of help," Kevin replied, exiting towards the stairwell, hoping that when this felony was reported on the local news, he would get his name mentioned, or maybe printed in the Richmond Times-Dispatch. "How very take-charge we are, Dana," Drummy said, astounded, once they were alone in the elevator, though he had to own up to himself that he had been rather impressed as well as amused by her sheer determination to get into the place, so much so that she would resort to lying about working alongside the FBI on a case. It almost seemed a shame he was going to have to fess up about the authorisation he was unable to get from the Bureau, although personally he hadn't been expecting their cooperation anyway. Stepping out onto the landing, they were met with a cool breeze from an electric fan which hung from a rather beautiful pinewood ceiling. Whilst Drummy was admiring the view, Scully had much more important things on her mind. Crossing over to a door at the far end, she checked the number, indicating to her phony co-worker that she'd found the right place. Now all they needed to do was get inside, which shouldn't be a problem. "So where is it?" she asked him impatiently. Drummy knew what she was referring to and shrugged his shoulders. "I'm sorry, Dana, but I couldn't actually get a search warrant." "What do you mean you couldn't get it?" she asked, stunned. Probably best to tell her the truth, he thought. They just figured it would be a complete waste of the Bureau's valuable time and resources. Noticing her eyes were now glaring at him, he continued cautiously. "So I wasn't assigned to this, but decided to accompany you anyway." "Why, so you could gloat?" Dana asked, angry and hurt by his revelation. What he wanted to say was, "No, it's because I want you to see Mulder in his true colours as a two-faced, deceitful bastard." But what came out was a grumpy cover story that hid his true feelings. "I just decided to give you a helping hand, isn't that what you wanted?" "Okay, well then I need you and your helping hands to pick this lock," she ordered him abruptly. Drummy looked at her, dumbfounded. "Didn't you hear me? I just said I couldn't get a warrant. So I'm not going to pick the damn lock, because then we will be committing a crime of breaking and entering." "Look, Drummy, I need to get into this place, and if you won't pick the lock, then I'll just have to kick the fucking door down," she said harshly, trying not to raise her voice too much. She didn't want a certain female occupant to hear her. "All right," he said, taken aback by her outburst, "but you're taking the rap if we end up with criminal charges." "Fine, I'll take my damn chances," she said, trying to compose herself. "Please, just open the door." Drummy explained that he hadn't bought his lock-picking equipment, but before she could flare up again, he hastily took his wallet out of an inside pocket of his jacket and produced a credit card. Once inside Naomi's condo, he thought he'd better follow Scully's instructions, and hopefully that would cease any more tantrums. So agreeing to check upstairs while she inspected the downstairs, without another word he set off down a dim-lit hallway. After a short while he discovered a metal spiral staircase, which at first scrutiny seemed to lead into complete darkness, and started to climb. Meanwhile Scully wandered slowly through the rooms, paying no attention to the absolute splendour of each one, which if she'd wanted to, she could still have taken in even though they were unlit. Following a curved wall around the end of a hall, this led her to what obviously was the lounge area. It was then she spotted an oval shape glinting across the room, and on closer inspection became aware that it was a beautiful gilt-edged mirror on the wall above a fireplace. Her heart almost jumped out of her throat, because now her suspicions were confirmed. As crazy as it sounded, and knowing it was something that certainly would never hold up in a court of law, she now believed that this was how the spirit of Kuchisaki found Naomi, and used her as a host, so she could kill reincarnations of her husband. With both hands she carefully removed the mirror from its hook. Feeling the bumps, curves, and ridges of its metal frame, she realized they were in fact several beautifully carved dragons, with eyes made from blood-red rubies. Turning it around, she straightway noticed a mark guaranteeing the authenticity of the mirror, which dated it back as far as 14th century Japan. Dana was completely amazed that this was an original and not a replica, because a fragile item such as this would surely have been destroyed long ago. Was it possible the slit-mouthed woman, Kuchisaki Onna, had been its owner, and when she was murdered in front of it, it somehow trapped her spirit and protected it from being shattered? Replacing the mirror back on the wall, she caught sight of her shadowy reflection. At first the Wicked Queen's well-known chant from the fairy tale came to mind. "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" But then she started recollecting on what she'd read on Mulder's computer, and began piecing together yet more unbelievable concepts. Maybe because the spirit could travel in many reflections, it had sought out other Asian beauties in their mirrors over the centuries, murdering those who chanted Bloody Mary in front of them. Perhaps Naomi's younger sister had played the same morbid game in her parents' bathroom. Allowing a faint smile to appear for a brief moment, she couldn't help thinking that to anyone else this would have sounded completely Looney Tunes. But oh, Mulder would have been so proud of her. However, if these incredible interpretations were true, then he was definitely in a world of trouble. Right then and there she hoped and prayed that when Drummy returned it wouldn't be with terrible news. Agent Drummy crept down the stairs looking for Dana, only to discover she was in the lounge staring at her image in a large mirror. The look on his face was one of complete self-satisfaction, and he was just itching to tell her what he'd found upstairs. In the bedroom, as a matter of fact. Without making a sound, he crept up behind, placing a hand on her shoulder. The unexpected touch made Scully almost jump out of her skin. However, all thoughts of a Japanese spirit about to attack were quelled when she recognized his own reflection in the mirror. Whirling round to face him, she screamed, "Jeez, Drummy! You scared the living daylights out of me!" "Sorry, didn't mean to," he apologized, grinning. A wave of relief began to wash over her, because on first impression it looked like he was harbouring good news. But then she realized he was looking terribly pleased with himself, like the cat who had just devoured a whole pot of cream. "What?" she asked, frowning. "Oh, Dana," he began, displaying another grin. "I hate to say I told you so, but—" "What the hell are you talking about?" she questioned, getting annoyed by his smug attitude. "What did you find up there?" "Well, first I had to find the bathroom." "Of course. Your bladder's way more important than finding my partner alive and well," she said, cutting him off sharply. Ignoring her remark, he continued what he had to tell her. "So I checked the rooms, which were a study den, and then came across the bedroom. And now for the piece de resistance," he thought. "It was fairly dark in there, but I did notice 2 people in the bed. I presume it was that Japanese assistant of yours, and she was snuggled up with a guy." Before she could utter any kind of reply, he added with a smirk, "Your beloved Fox Mulder, I believe. I must say, he didn't look to be in any distress, all comfy and cozy, wrapped up in her arms under the sheets like that." On hearing his words, Scully just stood rooted to the spot, open-mouthed, staring in disbelief. "You're lying," she hissed. "Haven't I been trying to tell you all along he's been screwing the chick? And who wouldn't with such a beautiful Japanese woman?" Realizing Scully was now backing away from him, shaking her head furiously, he added, "So, as I predicted, this has been a complete waste of my valuable time, and I should have listened to the FBI's advice not to get involved in the first place. I came with you because I wanted you to finally see your boyfriend for who he really is, an untrustworthy, dishonest prick," he announced proudly, expecting the penny to finally drop. "You bastard!" she exclaimed, outraged, and also wounded by the way he'd seemed so completely full of himself whilst revealing such cruel observations to her. "You don't know anything about Mulder at all!" she yelled. "I know what I saw, Dana," he said, frustrated that she was still refusing to accept the reality of the situation. "Go see for yourself if you don't believe me." He needn't have suggested that last part, as she was already on her way out of the room. "Fine, I will," she retorted back at him. Watching her leave, Drummy started to regret his foolishness a little, because now this woman was going to have to face the truth, and he also knew it was going to completely devastate her. Still, she'd been so incredibly stubborn and annoyed with him for not following her ridiculous idea that a mad, psychotic woman was holding Mulder captive, so why not let her be forced to take off those rose-coloured glasses she always wore when it came to him? Once realization had kicked in, he would be gracious enough to provide her with a shoulder to cry on, should she need it.